Hi, welcome back. So in this video, we'll go through the last part in this application where we're building an anonymous message board. And we had some iffy things with the application after the last part, and I've had a look at that, and it turns out that it really is some iffy things. Essentially what's happening is that if I go to add thread here, when we're adding a thread here, we're getting a sort of delay before the thread is added. So when I was testing it in the last video, it didn't actually show, but if I would wait a while, this thread would actually get added twice. Because what's happening is that the issue is that we're missing some code. So what's happening is that we're sending two requests, and the first request isn't getting handled in any sort of proper way, which means that we're sending another request, and that gets handled here, which is where we're getting redirected after a while, like 20-30 seconds. And we should fix that, of course. So what we need to do is that we need to have a redirect for this case as well, which I sort of missed. What's happening here is, of course, that we're accessing our Mongo database and we're inserting a board, since we need that. And in here we're inserting the new thread, and then nothing is actually happening because we're not dealing with this. We're not sending any sort of response, and that's why it's just chugging away on memory, which is bad. So what we're going to do is that we're going to add redirect, and that redirect is very simple. We don't even have to do a type check here, like we're doing if we have this else case. So in here, we know that we've added a new board, right? So we know that we're going to look for the directed body of the board. So we're going to have a rest.redirect, and we're going to have template string, and here we're going to redirect to board rec.body.board, and then we of course have to do the client.close as well. And with that, this thread thing actually works properly. And because of that, I think we should actually look at that so we can see that it works. So let's do an npm start. We're listening on the port, that's good. We can do this, and we're gonna add a new board. It's called video board. Lowercase letters, I guess. It doesn't really matter with this, but the way we've done the application, if we don't have lowercase letters here, I noticed, then we need to write it like this with a capital first letter, because otherwise the board doesn't actually exist, which is a bit iffy. So we're doing lowercase, and here we can add a new thread, and we want to have video board as the lead message. So, and then we can submit that, and see that we actually get transported to this new video board page instantly, which is what should happen. So this actually works now. We have a few other things that we need to do, I've noticed, and one of those is this part that we're actually getting not error messages but warning messages. It seems that the version of MongoDB that we have now, which is like, you know, new version, okay, yeah, anyway, this version of Mongo doesn't seem to support these, which we've had to add for a long while now, and the application actually works without these. So we're gonna have to find every place where we use that. So use new URL parser. You can see it's used in every single one of these. So we'll just go into these and delete this line because it's not needed. And with that, we're getting rid of the warning. It's not a huge deal if we get the warning either, it's just there, but it's cluttering the application. So since we don't need it, we just remove it. Yeah. with that, we actually have a working application. Everything that should work works, sort of. We have one more thing that we need to do, but I'm gonna wait a bit with that. And that's because I want to show why it's not working. So what we need to do here is obviously do the last part, which is testing. So if we close some of these, so we can go into functional tests here, and in here we have some stuff prepared. We should test the post, get, delete, and put for both threads and replies, and that's kind of obvious, right? It's a good thing to test that these work properly. We could add more tests, but we're just going to do these. And what we're going to need are these, sort of. Obviously, we want to change these to const, first of all, like so. This should be online. We also need to use the object ID from MongoDB. Yeah, we do that. Oh, yeah, let's do that. Good. There is no difference between this and doing this, of course. It actually looks better. So let's do that. Just deconstructing this from this. And here we're using this Chai. No biggie. But we're going to prepare some variables. So we prepare an ID, which we're going to use. We're preparing a message ID that we're also going to use. And we'll prepare a message thread ID. So, and these are all empty for now. We're going to fill them in later. So, in this first one, we're testing the threads so that they work properly. So inside of this one, we are going to need to have a test where we go for threads are successful. I think I removed a bit too much in here, maybe. Successfully posted to port. And this should be called done. And we should do a Chai.request server and no semicolon, and then we just go post, because this is the post, you can see that there. So we're going to post to API threads general, and we're going to send data, and the data we're going to send is simply text test thread and oops, comma, delete password should be test. So and then we're gonna end, and we want to have error and res. We're not actually dealing with the error, but we could. And then we're gonna assert dot equal res dot status as usual, and we're gonna make sure that that's 200. Then we call done on that. So all this should do is add a new thread to the database. That's it. And to follow that up, we need a get function, and this one should test. It should test that I can get all the threads from a specific board, and we're calling done on that, and Chai.request server, and we're getting /API/threads/general, and .end errors. And in here we're gonna have to check for lots of stuff. So we're gonna do a assert.equal, and I'm actually gonna be a little bit lazy and do 4 of these. I don't want to type it out. And we're gonna check the rest of the status. It should be 200. we are gonna check the res.body to thread, and that should read test thread, hopefully. And then we're also gonna do the res.body in the heading instead of that, obviously. Delete password should be test, and res.body. So board should be general, and we're not actually adding that, but if you look here, you can see that we are actually on the general board, so that's where we're adding this. And then we'll go for an assert property, and we're gonna have a few of these as well, so I'm just gonna copy paste 4 of these. So we should have a res.body. I'm actually gonna do this as well. That's a bit lazy. So this should be created on should be on in this one. We don't need to check which date it is and stuff. It's not that important for us to know. We want to know that it exists. This one should be bumped on. That should exist as well. And we should have an array of replies, which we want to check the property here that we have that, but we also want to check that it's an array later on. So we're gonna add one more property here that we're looking for, which is reported. But here we're also gonna do assert.isArray, and we're gonna look for this one. Because that should be an array, even if it's empty, it's still an array, right? So we want to know that we have this array of replies. And then we need to do an assert.equal again. And this one should be replies.length should be 0. And the reason for this is because we're actually creating a new thread here. We're not using an existing thread, and since it's a new thread, it has no messages, and then this should be an empty array, hopefully. We're also going to save this ID now. So we have an ID that we have created with this, and well, it's created automatically. But we're getting this thread now, and with that we can get the ID there. So res.body has an ID there that we can save. And we can also save the message thread ID, which is going to be that instead. So, and then we're calling done on this. And then we want to have delete here. And I'm actually going to move this around so that delete comes after put. Because it works better like that. So we're going to start with put, which is the update, obviously. Here we can test that I can successfully report the thread. And obviously everything that's going to happen here is that the reported instance of the database input here is going to change to true instead of false. So we're going to have a child request as usual. This is what we're doing. So put to /API/threads/general, and we're going to send a report ID, which is the object ID of ID, and this ID is obviously this ID. So we're going to report this thread. And then we just go for a res. Like so, there you go. Assert.equal and rest of status 200 first of all, just to make sure that we get the right status code. And assert.equal rest.text should be success. So we should successfully report this thread. And then we just call it done on this. And that's it there. So for the delete function, we want to delete a thread as well. And this is essentially why we save multiple IDs, because we want to delete the right stuff. I think, no, we're not using that here actually. Anyway, we want to test something here, and we should test that I can delete the thread by passing in the ID and delete password. And we're calling done, and we're doing a request towards the Chai server here. So dot delete and do the right endpoint. Like so, and in here we'll send a thread ID, which is going to be the ID. There you go. And we need a delete password to be able to delete it, and that delete password should be test. And if you want to do this completely properly, we should probably save this delete password up here in a variable to use that here, but this works as well. After we're sending that, we should end this, and we'll have an error and res. And here we should assert dot equal rest of status should be 200, and we should also assert dot equal that we get a rest of text that is success. So this is good, right? We should actually add a test here, I think, because now we're testing that we can delete this. But what happens if we cannot delete it? We actually need to call done here as well, I see. So I'm going to copy this one and add another test before this, where we're just testing that if I pass the wrong delete password, the thread is not deleted. So we're just calling the same thing in here, but instead of passing test as wrong password as delete password, we're passing it wrong. And that means that this should still be 200 because the endpoint is still working, right? What's not working is this. This should not be successful. It should be a incorrect password. Now we actually have an extra test here that tests the case that doesn't work. Yeah. So these are the tests for the threads. We should have some for the messages as well. And we're going to start with the post one. In here, we should test that I can post a message to an existing thread. And we obviously have this thread already, so we should post to that. So chai.request server .post, and we're posting this to api/replies/general .send, and we're going to send a thread ID, which is going to be the message thread ID that we saved above. We're going to have a text that's going to be test message, and we're going to have delete password that's simply delete. And then we have to make sure that this works. So error and res should be assert dot equal rest dot status 200 done. So, and then we're doing the get request for that. So we're going to test that I can get a list of messages by passing in thread ID, and we're calling done on that. So, and chai.request server, and we're gonna do a get towards /api/threads no, replies, obviously. Replies general. And then we do a query. And we're going to query this for the thread ID, the message thread ID. So we get the right thread here. And this works, obviously. I'm just going to come back to that a bit. We can do these message postings to this message thread ID because this delete that we're doing is not actually deleting the thread. It's just updating it to be deleted, but it still exists in the database, so we can actually add stuff to it anyway. So with that said, we can continue, and we're gonna end here res, and we're gonna assert dot equal res dot status 200. So assert dot is array should be res dot body dot replies. So the replies array, we're actually checking that up here as well, right? But we want to make sure. We want to make sure that this has that this is an array, because if this is not an array, then we cannot add stuff to it. So it's sort of double checking that it's actually working properly. Here we're gonna assert it equal, and we're gonna have res.body.replies. And in here, we're actually gonna be a little bit clever. So we're gonna use the last instance of this. We're always adding new reply here. So dot length. So -1. So we're doing the last instance of this array every time we're testing this, which means that we don't have to go into the database and delete the last message to make the new one work and stuff, which is kind of annoying to do. Dot message. So this is an array, right? And inside of this, we're getting a lot of properties. We want to get the message property of that, of the last message, or the last reply. I'm just going to copy this. And what we should get here is test message, because that's what we added here. We should also have assert.equal this thingy. And instead of message here, we should have delete password, and that should obviously be delete. We should have a property in this that is res.body, and that should be a created on in here. We should also have a property that's reported. We should have a property we should have another property here that's just thread, so we know which thread this message is connected to. And then we're saying message ID here. So we have one more variable up here that we're not using right now. So we're going to use the message ID variable, like so, and we're going to set that to res.body.replies, and the last instance of this, res.body.replies.length -1.id. And then we call it done, because since we save this ID now, we can actually update this one to reported. So we're doing that in here. So I can report a message, calling done, and then we're calling the server. We're using put to /API/threads /replies /general. And in here, we're just sending the thread ID. We get the right thread, which is message thread ID, and we're sending the reply ID, which is going to be this message ID. So, and then we checking that it works. So .end error and res. And obviously, first of all, we're just gonna make sure that we get the right status code. It should be 200. We should have an assert of equal res.text. It's gonna be success. And we call done on this. So, and with that, we have one more here, but we're gonna use double of these like we did with the threads. So I'm gonna use this one where I can, adding a test here, I can delete a message and have the, I can spell properly, and have the message text changed to deleted. Calling done on that, and this stuff dot delete API replies general. We're sending in some data. We obviously need the thread ID to be able to know where we should delete. We need the reply ID to know which reply to delete. And we're gonna need the delete password. Need a comment there. Delete password should just be delete. And to check that it works, we're doing this, where we have an assert dot equal res.status 200, and we set assert dot equal res.text should be success. And done. And what's missing here is obviously that we want to make sure that we cannot delete this if we have the wrong why did I do this? Okay, we're gonna restructure some things here. I just realized. Anyway, so we have this test here. It's down there. So we don't need a new suite for this actually. We don't need that for the thread either. But what we're going to do here is obviously we're changing this text. I cannot delete a message if I pass in the wrong password. And we still pass in the same thread, the same reply ID, but we're passing the wrong password. So we can pass in hello. And with that, we should have a res.text response that's just incorrect password. And before I forget, let's go up to the threads here. I actually have two test suites that's called delete now, which is unnecessary. So we can delete this one. So, and then we just grab this whole thing and put it inside of this test suite. So, should be better. And with this, we can actually run through our tests. And not all of them are going to work. I will run through them first to show why they're not working. So, if we run npm test, you can see that we're passing. Oh. Huh. Wait, did I not change that? They should not be working, at least. Let's see. Alright, never mind, it works. And with that, we're actually done with this. We're done with the with all the JavaScript projects on FreeCodeCamp. The ones that are left here are, at this point, just the Python ones. So if we look at this one, we have a few projects here. I think that all of these are Python right now. Yeah, looks like it. And the same thing with this quality assurance one. These two are, this is actually a JavaScript one. So since I did these, they've added a few more, which I don't really intend to do properly. So this was the last one when I did FreeCodeCamp, and I finished that about 9 months ago by now. So thanks for watching, and good luck with your own projects. Bye.